So tell me, you had to describe our podcast in a LLM prompt recently. Um, how did you describe it?
Well, this maybe was partly partially motivated by you saying you were going to do a radical experiment and not do any, or at least a lot of research. I mean, I'm sure you know something on the subject. Uh, but I also just decided to, this show and your style has inspired me to dig a little deeper, just a little.
Just a little
So
scraping.
I built a Claude project,
Mm,
aka Agent, to help with that, to help with the research. Initially, actually, my thought was just to help synthesize other sources that I find, because I think
yep.
LLMs are awfully good at that. Um, but it was funny. It couldn't help when I put in the first prompt to actually come up with its own opinion.
Yeah, is that fascinating?
And we could
Yeah,
dig into that a bit.
I know, dude. It's wild.
So here's how I described this.
Yeah.
You are a research assistant for a podcast. Well, just I feel like there's maybe a little piece here that could be instructive to people when you're
Yep.
prompting an LLM. Generally, you can kind of tell it what role to play. And when you're building a project, which is a way to sort of consolidate instructions and use them over and over again with different chats, which is really
Mm,
handy. Uh, these are the instructions. So you're kind of defining its role over
mm.
time. So I said, Claude, you are a research assistant for a podcast called Totally Classic, hosted by me, Andy Swindler, and Brendan McNamara, lifelong besties and college roommates. This is a truth-seeking show where we are not afraid to ask real questions and present real research. Andy tends to view issues through feelings and qualitative stories. Brendan is an intense quantitative researcher and is semantically conservative. Each episode's fiery and often complex theme is presented as a binary question in an attempt to create a before-after voting system for the host to reveal their arc of growth. Vulnerability, curiosity, and love are the core values. Dignity and agency are guiding lights. Your job is to be as neutral as possible in aiding Andy's research prior to recording.
Nice.
Fair?
Yeah, that's pretty fair and sweet. And wait, did it already push back on that, or was it just like in the first when you first started asking it questions, it would sort of immediately
Well,
start
this is the funny thing.
taking a position?
It didn't push back, but I realized, I mean, obviously Google's getting, I don't know, quote unquote, better at understanding vague questions just because it's basically AI now too with Gemini.
Yeah.
Uh, but I thought, rather than sort of asking it a topical question about what we're doing, just ask it
Yeah.
the actual question of the hour
Yeah.
and see what it says. So the prompt I gave underneath those instructions within the project
Yeah.
was today's episode is ICE the bad guy? That's funny. I worded it in the singular because I think it's probably more accurate to say, are ICE the bad guys?
Oh, right. Yeah,
Sort
yeah,
of a
yeah.
strange
Although that's
grammatical
colloquial.
deal.
Yeah, yeah. That's colloquial. I think we tend to singularly anthropomorphize um, any substantial entity, as
Which
you
which which maybe is, as I discovered, part of the challenge here because
yeah, sure,
there's
of course.
complexity within the entity itself I didn't
Oh,
even know about.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but here's the thing. I said, yeah, is ICE the bad guy? Help me synthesize this research. And I didn't give it anything yet because I was going to give it in different prompts.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it jumps into search the web. Here's your synthesized research brief for the episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Isn't
It
that
gave me a
I
whole
think it's hilarious sometimes when you're like it's like the most eager research assistant sometimes.
It's like, look what I found. Look what I found. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah, yeah.
probably should have said, I will enter the things one by
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And
Wait,
it did cite its sources. I didn't click on every one of them, but it did leverage your favorite source a decent amount with the old Wikipedia. So
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst. Isn't that so fascinating, though, Andy? I think because we're the generation when Wikipedia didn't exist and then it existed, and we are like, oh, that's a cool thing. And we're also of the generation that you weren't allowed to use it in grade school. You weren't allowed to cite it in grade school, high school, college, post collegiate. I still think that's the case, is it not? Maybe Claude would know.
I don't know. You
Um,
mentioned that before, but I don't know.
yeah, it was like it was fully banned and outlawed because it's not a it's there's it, it's like a self-regulated organism, famously biased. Certain editors like go and like just rewrite whenever big incidents happen, and you're like every time the Ayatollah version just happened or whatever, and Wikipedia is fighting over that now. They're like trying everyone's like you're trying to whitewash the Ayatollahs sort of credibility right now, and like they're like, what is they're like, everyone's like, this is amazing. We're watching sort of propaganda develop in real time. Um,
Well, it's
so it's
funny because
fascinating, but the LLMs weigh on it very heavily. But that's not. It's like it's not a great source, y'all. I mean, it's like it's a great source for like a, hey, what's basically up with blah blah blah, right? I mean, that's I don't know. That's how most people I know use it. And then you go, okay, but let me actually look into it, like for real, for real. It's like it's a great cursory glance on like what Gallimaufry means, or you know what I mean, or I don't know, when was the first bookstore opened in, I don't know, in England, post Gutenberg by Gutenberg Press.
well, my hope with it going way back, I'm
Yeah,
very attracted to like crowdsourcing. It's like,
yeah,
oh, let's bring as many perspectives as possible. So I guess I've leaned on it as hopefully showing kind of some kind of consensus. Not that that's the right answer a lot of the time, but that
sure, yeah.
as a almost like a survey system. Like, oh, okay, here's sort of the average viewpoint. But no, but I remember hearing that stat when I was really doing a lot with social media, even professionally, maybe 15 years ago,
Yeah.
that 100 people maintained about 50% of the content on Wikipedia.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. It's a consensus represented by unknown actors. Now, in some ways, unknown actors are helpful, but some people, of course, have like data scraped and figured out who a lot of the people are. Or a lot of times, if you ever go deep dive on the Wikipedia sort of explorations, they'll just call them by their sort of internal name, whatever, Captain Minecraft or whatever the heck is, has altered. And then you'll see editors have wars where it changed 1206, changed 1209, changed 1212, changed 1218, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like they're just literally going back and forth and back and forth. And I noticed, especially because I would use Wikipedia because I would use it as my third source for people, because I'm like, here's a super basic in case you just want to like, I don't even know. Is that what people say? But I mean, in some ways, Wikipedia kind of is bandwagon fallacy in encyclopedia, because it's
And
just,
that's actually useful to know.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, and if
Yeah,
you look at
it's
Wikipedia, it'll tell you what a bandwagon fallacy is, generally speaking.
so
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if we digress. It's relevant. I hope somebody's interested to hear how we do our research, how we come to these ideas, and
Yeah,
why our perspectives and our ways of moving through this information are balanced. I think enough to be hopefully actually give us a better perspective on truth eventually.
yeah,
But
yeah.
at a minimum, just demonstrate that two people with two pretty different ways of moving through information can have rigorous and loving conversations.
Yeah, and sometimes even productive. Can you believe it? Speaking of those people, I'm Brendan McNamara, one of those people.
And I am Andy Swindler. So,
Typical. Oh, go ahead. Go, go.
well, I was just going to restate the question. Do you
Go
have
ahead.
something else to add?
No, I was just going to pre-vote, but no, restating the question after that digression is probably quite wise.
Great. Is ICE the bad guy?
Uh,
So,
yeah.
I live in Chicago. Obviously, according to our at least one political leader, the worst place in America. Um, and I will admit, having been somebody who a few years ago was super on the streets, kind of social justice, revolutionary, going to lots of protests, doing lots of stuff. I've been a little out of touch in the last handful of years, and that's okay. I've focused on my family, but I am wanting to get more involved, and I want to do that
Mm,
from a bit, I don't know, a more circumspect lens, I guess, not just leap in and
yeah.
assume that the person leading the training has all the answers. And speaking of which, I'm actually this weekend, my wife and I are going to go to a Know Your Rights training, which I think is rather focused on ICE. Last Friday, I had coffee with actually a new consulting client who lives here, and she was saying how the ICE watch has sort of evolved in the area that I'm in,
Mm.
and how people have actually created zones, kind of a neighborhood watch kind of deal, but like really specifically focused on ICE. And that's fascinating.
So instead of a neighborhood watch to warn about criminals, it's a neighborhood watch to warn against law enforcement. So it's like The Wire. It's like literally, it's I don't know, as a kid, depending on what neighborhood you lived on, but the lookouts. They're literally lookouts for for, in this case, criminals or people who aren't criminals who are being treated like criminals, I suppose would be the fair way to say it. But they're literally the ones being like, 5-0, whoop whoop, like those people. You're here, whoop whoop. That is why you heard whoop whoop. They're the whoop whoop squad. But isn't that fast? I mean, can you just, we have to pause right there because that's so amazing, right? So they're setting up a neighborhood watch, which is the opposite of every neighborhood watch we've ever heard of in our whole lives, right? I mean, I've never heard of a neighborhood watch that was watching out for the police, not for criminals, right? Have you? Or is this the first instance? For me, it's the first. I've never heard this before in my life.
I mean, informally, I've definitely the mutual aid networks are known for Buck 12, like no fans of the police. Um, in fact, I think once I was on a Slack channel and I put in a nonprofit was having like a neighborhood walk, on the west side of Chicago, and there happens to be a police precinct there that's actually legitimately community oriented, and so their logo was on it, and I got blasted out of the stratosphere for even like posting this flyer that had a police logo on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, because this already frames the question very interestingly, right? I feel like this already is the first twist, maybe, because the bad guy. This is always you always have to semantic it, right? What does the bad guy mean? For me, bad guy in a traditional sense, you can just do it. This is how they do it in fictional lore, and it's penetrated across all genres at this point. But black hats and white hats pretty much is how they refer to it in common pop culture nowadays. Um, and that comes from the sort of Old West idea, right? So there were anti heroes allowed, but essentially the sheriffs and the outlaws. However, again, this might already be one of those situations where you're like, wait, from progressive lens, have you flipped the hats? Meaning, is the good guy the black hat now? Even though I would say common culture. Well, actually, pause there. Let me not make that assumption, Wikipedia style. If I looked at Wikipedia, I think it would agree with me, but that's just my assumption. But would you have that general assumption as well? Good guy, bad guy comes from childish thinking, childhood games, literally as kids, it was like Cowboys and Indians, right? And like Indians, were they the bad guys? Were they the other force? It was hard to tell. But definitely cops and robbers was super clear.
Oh yeah. Oh, all
Uh,
those games.
yeah,
Not to mention a lot of our movies. I mean, have
yeah,
just incredibly simplified like hero
yeah,
story
yeah, yeah.
narratives.
But that's what it means. That's what the good guy means. It doesn't mean a man of virtue generally. Like that's a good man, right? Or a good woman would mean that. But the good guy means this that's very specific terminology that means classically the sheriff. So then if the sheriff is now it's not just a bad sheriff necessarily, but it's sheriffs are bad, then you've taken a paradigm. And this is where we get into that progressive issue sometimes where you have what's sort of like, what is it, concealed semantic drift, which is logical fallacy of equivocation. You can look that up on Wikipedia, which is essentially using multiple definitions for the same word in a single presentation or argument. And if you're using something that you know means something else, but you're using it to mean what you want it to mean without really ever defining that that's what it means, you are sort of smuggling in or colonizing, right? You're using the indigenous territory, the harvest, the well harvested, well curated, like land, semantic land that was taken care of by those previous, and just being like, this is now this is Chicago. You know what I mean? You've taken it semantically. So wait, is that happening, or am I just like looking for semantic ghosts in the machine?
Well, to be clear, I don't know that I've heard anybody call Ice the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to come up with a fun way to title the
Well, no,
episode.
but I don't think. But if there's a neighborhood watch looking out for cops, then that's the game they're playing. They're playing cops and robbers in reverse. So
That's fair.
they're on the robber side, essentially, like
If
functionally.
there's only two sides, yes, that's fair.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, good guy. I think good guy, bad guy kind of presupposes that. So like
Right.
and that's what we're trying to do. Also, like anytime we're voting on a binary, what we are voting on, people, for please understand, most of the time is tenability, meaning which one is more likely. Sometimes it's Occam's razor, sometimes it's preponderance of evidence, sometimes it's completely like one way or the other. But a lot of times it just means, oh yeah, this is one is clearly more tenable than the other, right? Gravity. Is gravity a real thing? Thumbs up. Pretty highly tenable. It seems to operate the way people say it operates. Um, is there a chance it doesn't? I don't know. I've seen planes take off, bumblebees fly. There's plenty of questions there. And gravity itself is a social construct because it's a word to describe a phenomenon, et cetera, et cetera. But we're
Isn't
just
that one
here.
of those things though that physicists say like we can't actually explain it in the broader sense?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Like time, it's
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
don't know.
It's a what? It's a what poorly defined,
Right.
and it's at least stable enough that we can kind of predict it and that sort of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and make mutual reference in a way that's not overly confusing. Which actually, my statement is that language is actually meant to be more like that than people treat it, where it's just like, I don't know, I can do whatever I want with it all the time. And again, I'm a poet, but I'm like, no, that's what poetry's for. That's or Dadaism. That's when you do whatever you want with language. But
But
then
when we're trying to,
communicate,
communicate with each
yeah,
other, the clarity is paramount.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's huge. So I within that, so they already. So wait, does that almost already answer the question? Meaning, are they the bad guys by classic or even consistent or even consensus definition of they can't be the bad guys because you're having to reverse what a neighborhood watch has always done or what a good guy bad guy has always been defined as, which means basically they have to be the good guys. Can they be the corrupt good guys? Ooh, corrupt cops, right? Possibly. And we could actually, and then we can look at the level of corruption to see if they qualify. But
And
does that start to already answer the question? Meaning it's an inevitable conclusion of the neighborhood watch example.
does enough corruption eventually change you into the bad guy? I mean, that's
Right, right. So we'd have to examine corruption of both cohorts next, right? Is that where you went from the oh yeah, in terms of research or whatever, that was the research I did way before this project was levels of corruption in ICE. And so for example, their like wrongful arrest um, metric is point 0.2. It was like leaped from something like 0.17 to 0.34 or something, but they've also tripled the amount of people they're interacting with. And their incidents of violence, incidents of death, incidents of wrongful arrest are all order of magnitude. That's like 10 times and more lower than other types of law enforcement. So as far as corruption goes, they're phenomenally uncorrupt in terms of their outcome, in terms of like equity in that sense, equality of outcome. So they're less corrupt than cops. They're less corrupt than the FBI, than internal affairs, than CIA, than SWAT, than or whatever. Certainly local law enforcement. They might be more poorly trained, all that sort of thing. But
well,
I think that's a good place to dig in further. So yeah, what did you find?
well, that training one that's one that definitely jumped out. First, though, I
Yeah,
didn't know this. I'm guessing most people don't because we just say ice. Um, is hold on, where is it in my research? Wait, tell me I actually pulled that out.
you
Hold,
actually
please.
pulled that up.
All right. Just organizing my research here. So one thing Claude pointed out, and I would love to know if this jives with you because I honestly didn't go into a lot of fact checking on this one
Mm,
because it seemed straightforward enough. Seemed like a weird thing to lie about. That there's essentially two two entities, two law enforcement components: Homeland Security Investigations (HSI)
hmm
and Enforcement and Removal Operations (ERO). And the we typically just collapse them into ICE. This was created as part of the Homeland Security Act of 2002 following the 9/11 attacks, absorbing functions from the Immigration and Naturalization Service and the U.S. Customs Service.
Yeah, yeah,
That all track?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a universal type of organization, although ours is organized like whatever, some nations, 20 or 30 of the major nations, and then unlike other ones, some are more like civilian based, like contractor. A lot of them are federalized, who do this same thing. I just mean every nation has a version, has an organization that does what ICE does. Um, they all function slightly differently. or through different channels of regulation.
And I guess one of the strange things is ice versus ice, like spy versus spy,
Yeah,
which there was this photo of Melania Trump and like talk about a black hat, like with the UN Security Council. And
yeah,
one of
yeah.
the comments was like, she looks like one of those guys from Spy versus Spy. I was
She totally
like,
does.
it does.
She does.
Um, so
Yes.
I guess these agencies like don't jive together, and the one that's more focused on uh, criminal, like the HSI, I guess at some point actually wanted to try to be disconnected because the arrests and the focus on what I think most people normally call as ICE was distracting from their actual work behind the scenes. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, yeah, I think that, I mean, that's sort of that cancellation impulse, which is disassociate. Um, just such a lame. I think that's so lame. You know what I mean? Oh, a bunch of people don't like this brand for what? For like 6 months, a year, and you're like, oh gosh, I don't know. Should we distance ourselves? Like, what? Grow up. You know what I mean? Like, really? Like, grow up. Like, would you really be like, this? It has bad press for a long amount of time. It's such to me. It's such crazy corporate thinking where it's like we've got to think about the shareholders. Like we can't have stocks plummeting. You're like, that's not the realm that we're functioning in, though. We're in the function. We're functioning in the thing of executing law lawfully. So why, in what way would you, with your especially administrate now? Granted, if it's too much bureaucracy, maybe they should, and then we can shut one of them down or cut them in half if it's all bureaucratic and not pragmatic. But like that instinct is just so weak sauce. I say that. I know it's like a whatever millennial slang to say that, but like especially for the younger people, weak sauce. You don't just run away because people don't like a thing. I think we have a weird fear of like bad press, whether interpersonally or broadly speaking. That's just a funny thing. Yeah, I was shocked. I didn't know ICE. Like when you look up statistics on how many U.S. citizens ICE has arrested, you can be like, oh gosh, that's more than I thought. That's what they deliberately do. ICE enforces over 400 laws, many of which are specifically U.S. citizens violate. And so I didn't know that until I started looking up statistics, and I was like, oh, that is kind of a high number. And I was like, why is that? I was like, oh, because it's immigration enforcement, but it's also they will arrest U.S. citizens who are trafficking human beings, pimps or whatever, that sort of thing. Um, but
so
I thought that was fascinating too.
I mean that is fascinating. I have a visual here to guide our conversation. So I
Oh
just
yeah,
delivered a pachakucha about a sign project. I take pictures of signs everywhere. I just think signs are fascinating. What a cool way to communicate different ways. All
yeah,
sorts of things. Everything from here's the bathroom to watch out for ice. Um,
yes,
and around here in Chicago, I don't know how prevalent this is in other areas, but here it's quite common for businesses to not only make their opinion known, but to attempt, in many cases, like we see here, to try to say something that seems official and legally viable. I don't know if that's true, but federal agents, you must have a judicial warrant signed by a judge to enter. Administrative warrants by federal agencies are not applicable for entry. So I
hmm
I don't know. I don't know if
yeah. Well, that's a
if
fascinating thing.
if
Is
you
it?
need to say that or if it helps to say that. I guess
Yeah.
I would assume that's true anyway, but I don't know.
Yeah. And I would wonder about all these businesses. Did they also have the signs up previously in 2020, 2021, telling all sorts of other people to get out? My assumption, especially with the Galamafri thing, Galleria, I'd not be shocked if they also were like unvaccinated people can't come in here. If you're not wearing a mask, you can't come in here. Which means who we're talking about here is the bad guys. They're literally the bad guys. Segregationists are not ever the good guys. So we're talking about the bad guys now identifying who the new bad guy is, in which case we have to at least be on the surface extremely skeptical about that. Everyone's welcome here. Mm, we got to put a mask on. So unmasked people are not welcome here. All are welcome here. You're not vaccinated? Okay, not you. Okay, took those signs down? Okay, cool. Who can we block next? And never mind, none of those things are violating anything in none of those people groups are doing anything improper from any tenable basis as a unit. So what we're doing is saying all and I so immigration enforcement they're also suggesting that somehow ICE would be looking at the two signs together is somehow unsafe. How, I guess that's my question. How would they justify that as a grand statement as they've made it? Meaning, will it be unsafe to some people? Sure. But you can look statistically, less than half a percent of people that I interact with are, would it be a situation where it's like, oh, you could call that unsafe? Because we really don't talk about restricting criminal activity as creating lack of safety for criminals, do we? Or is that essentially what's being discussed through euphemism? Maybe is my question.
I think the primary objection, and I do. So a couple themes I'd love for us to address. One would just be
Yeah,
like, how has this played out across administrations since,
yeah,
I don't know, more than 2 decades, right? A number of different parties
yeah,
overseeing this. Uh, Obama notably, shifting the immigration policy in a certain direction that I'm not even sure many Democrats and progressives at that time even fully understood, including myself. And then training, like the fact that they've gutted the ICE training, which doesn't seem like a good idea under any circumstances,
sure.
as far as I'm concerned, whatever we believe. Uh, I would admit my bias, again, not only hailing from more progressive groups, but also, I don't know, the way I've trained all my feeds is like that's what I see mostly.
Yeah.
Is the folks here who are at the Broadview facility, protesting, chasing down ICE, honking at them, uh, all kinds of stuff.
Well, how
And
do
the
you square
thing,
that from your small town? Like you came from a small town when people chased the cops around and honked at the cops and like pulled in front of the cops in their minivans and stuff. Like, how did you regard that as in the good guy, bad guy days?
it was hard to find a cop in my town. It was well known there will only be like I think 4 cops on patrol at any time in a town of about 12,000 people. So
Yeah.
you knew if you saw like 2 cops in a night, like your odds were pretty good that you were free and clear to do whatever the hell you wanted. Being a good guy and all, you could just do whatever the hell you wanted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when cops came around, like, what percentage of people would usually try to stop them from doing what they were doing?
Or what? I heard that question differently. What percentage? I never saw that. That's not how
Yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
interacted.
Yeah, yeah. So then why would you assume because people are trying to stop police from doing something that that would in any way suggest, even just maybe beyond a 50-50, that they were trying to stop them for a good reason?
Well, it goes back to the corruption and the overstepping. And so I'd say the biggest theme that I would label as sort of neutrally, I think, as possible would be, are there false positives? So the thing that stand out to me in the, Claude neatly organized, like the case for ICE and the case against,
Yeah,
and then the case for, and I think you've pointed to things like this, they are a law enforcement agency. They have genuinely, arrested criminals. In this case, I think these stats come right from ICE, but seized over 1.2 million pounds of narcotics. And this is from in fiscal year 2023. So it was a few years ago.
yeah,
Um, and the most important, I would hope we all agree with, notwithstanding an abortion tie-in, is 1,806 victims of child exploitation that they've arrested, identified, and arrested. So that message is almost entirely lost in the progressive camp, as far as I can tell. Um, it's basically like I first of all, I don't know. I should probably give people more credit, but I'm also just sort of speaking for sort of what I
sure.
absorb,
Yeah, yeah,
which
just
is which
perception.
is like ICE either just showed up
Hmm.
or has been dramatically remissioned, within the Trump administration, or given new power and authority, or just let loose. That's
Yeah,
almost more the theme of it, is like they've been let loose. So there's this, I guess, there's this idea that they're like rabid dogs we had on a leash, and we just let them all loose. And
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know how many people work for ICE. It's a bunch. So I bet there's all kinds of people, you know.
I would assume there's people who are absolutely awful. Well, and the difficulty becomes no rational human adult can say, well, because I've seen these incidents over and over again because they do things wrong. Like I don't think either one of us would disagree that ICE agents have
That's
done things
my
poorly.
biggest problem. I mean, again, going to my tendency to even
Yeah,
anecdotal stories, I am not confident I've ever seen an ICE agent. We were driving downtown Chicago the other day, Lower Rocker Drive,
yeah,
and there was this like white SUV that was driving like a total asshole, and I'm just like,
yeah.
I bet it's ICE.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Well, isn't
like,
it the funny
eh?
the idea of yeah them overreaching or being poorly trained? How trained are the activists opposing them, and how much are they overreaching past law in terms of you're not really actually allowed to obstruct law enforcement in any way, shape, or form. You can't pull your car, and you can't scream at and warn a criminal legally. Hey, the cops are coming! Now, they'll let you go for it. It happens to little kids in the hood or whatever get can just run away all the time. But like in terms of like if we're going to introduce that, which I think is most frequently invoked, then that has to apply to everybody. That can't just be like would have to look statistically across the whole schematic. And so the thing I don't understand is, especially in the progressive camp, right? This is a at the very least you have to go in the collective like activist space. Hey, we were super wrong about COVID, right? In our cohort generally thought COVID was 80 to 100 times more dangerous than it was, right? There's polling on people's assumption of how likely you were to be hospitalized from COVID, and they thought it was 80 times above the actual rate, which is 0.8%. Then they thought, some people thought up to like thousands or tens of thousands of black people were being killed by police every year in 2020 and 2021. And it was like 84 or whatever. And unarmed was like dozens. So they had like 100 to 1,000 times incorrect apprehension then. So I don't understand. The thing I don't understand that's baffling to me, no one's saying ICE is perfect, and no one reasonable is saying ICE is perfect, or any organization, law enforcement organization. And I have a generally, I find cops annoying. My mom has brought up on obstruction charges relative to a protest, and her friend was arrested because he didn't provide ID because you don't have to know your rights. You don't have to provide ID, but they're adding extra charges that he was obstructing traffic while involved in a protest. There was literally four people there. And resisting an officer by not providing ID, but you don't have to legally provide it, so you can't really call that resistance or whatever. So listen, I'm literally my mother is going to trial because a police officer said she was obstructing during a protest. So again, I don't want anyone to get confused as like you're a this and that because people jump to that. However, that doesn't mean you that like police in and of themselves are like, oh, we have to resist them. We have to not let them do their job. Because I would say for most, especially for areas that quote unquote need police, I don't know too many people in high crime areas who are like, yeah, get the police out of here, get law enforcement out of our town. They don't want it. They need flipping help. Like law abiding people need help. So that's my confusion is like where, especially in your space, how are people confronting that they like literally have a very shoddy record of estimating danger and now they're saying something super dangerous. And I'm sure Claude showed you the danger levels are not high in a per capita basis, meaning like people were like, oh, the kids were scared to go to school. Oh my gosh, my children were afraid to go to school. They thought terrible things would happen to them. Like what a stupid, I'm sorry, but that's stupid. There's amazing that you're afraid of that, but there is no statistical reason for you to be afraid of that. Like that's an insane fear. That's a social hypochondria that we cannot take seriously. We can take seriously as a come alongside someone and give them a hug and help them do some deep breathing and recognize that they're experiencing a phobia. But to me, like with this whole idea of like setting up a neighborhood watch, so you're saying law enforcement are the bad guys because you know what? They're trained too fast now. And I would say the most problematic part is they now no longer need a judicial warrant for entering a premises that they have reasonable cause to believe someone they're trying to get is. They now just need an internal warrant. So that's really the only big, like, I would say, constitutional shift under Trump. The rest of it is just doing what the heck every president we've in our whole life has said they would do. So that's the thing I don't understand. Like it's a poorly prophetic unit claiming a danger that no reality points to being a legitimate appraisal of reality in opposition to just a super normal thing to do that just hasn't been done. Meaning, politicians of both sides of the aisle have said that they were doing this and have done versions of this. There was workplace raids under Obama, but nowhere has any. And now you're like, but look at all the harm. You're literally driving around and blocking them from doing things. You're organizing neighborhood watches to not stop criminals, but to stop law enforcement with and a law enforcement that doesn't have a bad capture rate compared to every other type of law enforcement. So that's my thing. It's like, wait, what is so actually novel? Not just like, well, I don't like this little thing about it. Totally normal. But like it's so novel that they're literally inverting the good guy, bad guy paradigm.
So one thing I forgot to ask us to pre-vote. I think you kind of did actually when you even just analyzed the nature of the question.
Yeah.
But pre-vote,
Oh yeah, yeah.
are is ICE the bad guy?
No, it's just not possible. It's yeah, it's too absolute.
I'm gonna ever since we introduced the sideways thumb, I'm gonna go. I'm like
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure this out, honestly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So then I'm assuming, what did you do to Claude too? Did you start from like a how are they? Give me the steel man, right? Like how are they the good guys? Tell me everything that they do that's good.
Well, like I said, I was gonna try to like just layer in some. No, my initial approach was to I had found some articles. I
Yeah,
attempted more than usual for
yeah, yeah,
myself to grab articles and even like try to figure out the bias of the publications because I think you
yeah,
know that much better than I do generally. And I think again, just to pull back the curtain, I probably represent the everyman here a little more than Brendan in terms of like I don't know, skimming headlines and sort of absorbing pieces of things and not always going deep. So I'm attempting to go deeper because I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's a good thing for all of us to do, and then have debates about it, and not even debates, but dialogue about it. Like
yeah,
figure out
yeah.
well, what the
Trying to
hell's going on here.
figure it out exactly.
Um, so uh, so no, and like I said, Claude just sort of launched into its own. I don't know. It just grabbed it, did its own research,
Yep,
poured out. It did start with the case for ICE, for what it's worth. The
yep,
case for ICE, what defenders would say, and then the case against ICE. And again, the case for ICE was like, hey, it actually has made a difference, like for human trafficking specifically, you
yep,
know, 1,300, human trafficking cases, et cetera. So, but then the case against and it was funny actually because it was all over the place, right? So I think again, one of the only I think one out of whatever five uh pieces it pulled was actually in 2025. It was actually in the current Trump administration.
oh, interesting.
So some of these were
Biden era.
well, let's see. So 2017 to 2019, um,
That's Trump won.
Trump won, and then yeah, 2024 would have been Biden. But then, yeah, the other one is like 2002 to 2017. I mean, we're
Oh
covering
my
multiple
gosh.
Bush,
Yeah, yeah,
Obama.
yeah.
Anyway, so it's all over the map. Um, the I think one of the themes that seemed the most consistent
Hmm.
again were uh, the training reduction. So this is from a PBS article,
Hmm.
an interview with Jeff. Oh no, I'm sorry. First. Let's do this. This is from Politico, interviewing
Okay.
John Sandweg, the former acting ICE director,
Hmm.
and basically saying those rules are gone. And this is, talking about a shift from worst first to mass sweeps. And
Yeah.
I think that seems to be one of the big shifts.
Yeah. But why would that matter in terms of law? Because it doesn't matter. ICE's job is not to do worse first. Uh, Obama didn't do worse first. He just said he did worse first. Nobody does worse first in terms of statistical numbers, because that's just not how many people there are who are the worst. But you're just means that's your primary focus. That doesn't mean you scoop up the most of them. So I think that's the confusion. Also, why worst first? Who cares, right? If your job is, we both agree, ICE's job in the deportation part is to get rid of anybody who's not here, right? Who's violated law, who has committed a crime, whether it's prosecuted as criminal or civil, I don't think matters to the average person, because that's not what crime means. And in good guy, bad guy language, that's not what crime means. Crime doesn't mean, oh, well, this is a criminal prosecution. Crime means a violation of law. So if you enter the country illegally, that's a crime. Is it a criminal act in the judicial system? No. If you do it twice, it is. Um, if you overstay your visa, is that a criminal act? No, it's a civil infraction. However, it's a crime. Like, you've violated the law. So ICE's job is, I think maybe we won't agree, but is to enforce the law. So worst first, who cares? Like, who cares? That's branding. That's literally like Red Bull has a different color container, or it's sugar free now. The job is to get rid of everybody who's not supposed to be here. That's the gig. And there's 12 million of those.
And so,
So,
so separately,
yeah.
like we were saying the other day, we could have a whole different debate about whether those laws are ethical, not
Yes,
much
yes,
less moral. But
yes. Every country on the, but it's nothing. It doesn't make us an outlier or scary or weird or dangerous or anything, is what I mean. Like, every country on the planet gets rid of people who aren't supposed to be there.
yeah, all I'm saying is it
Yeah.
would complicate this even more. Like right now, we're just talking about the
Yes.
enforcement of these laws, not
Yes.
necessarily.
Like, if the law, if you're allowed to have sovereignty of space, is the overall question. Like,
Yeah.
does your house belong to you? Does a nation belong to a nation? Do like do hunting grounds belong to the Lakota when they don't want the Comanche coming in? Like, does anyone own any land ever?
So I think one thing that came up was this. I think the progressives argue there's a 70% criminal arrest stat, but
Mm-hmm.
that's contested considerably. And it relates to false positives. I mean, yeah, I think, I mean, there's certainly the camp of just, hey, abolish the police.
Yes,
That's, and I'm for a reduction of police generally. I think we did we even do a whole episode about that? But
I think so.
um, let's, understand that position exists. I don't think that's the position of even most ICE activists, but it may be more than I know. But within that more middle ground is that they are potentially unnecessary. Let's say the extreme view would be like they're unnecessary to exist at all, and that it is easy for a progressive to slip into that mindset because it's I don't know. I love to indulge a naive notion that we should all just, I do envision a future where nation states don't exist and there's one beautiful humanity and we're all united. But we don't live there, and I think there's some naivete wrapped into that as well, given the realities of
Yeah, it's just how do you do it for your own house? I think is how, like, who do you let can anybody come in your house anytime they want and stay there as long as they want? And if ever, and I know some people who do that. There was a guy on BBC, and they were like, he practices no, his door's always unlocked, sometimes even open. He doesn't believe in, he believes in that utopian ideal. And they were like, how many times have you been burglarized? And he's like, oh, just 9, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, I think. So that's the outcome. But if you do it. But the thing is, I don't know any progressives who are doing it. So then I'm just like, you don't believe. Like, you can just say you don't believe that, or you believe it for other people, which is pretty weird, right? To be like, it's sometimes it's the worst part of like a Marxist concept, which is like, well, don't take from me, I don't have that much, but go take from those people. So you're basically identifying an other that must be taken from. So the question is, like, does any group own any space and they're able to decide it at all? And now, if you say that doesn't exist and it isn't the right thing because it's not utopian, it's not perfect, great, that's a thesis. You can't then be like, doing land acknowledgments, and you can't be like, we took the land from Native Americans. Like, You know what I'm saying? And so to me, I was like, from the same lips of, or the same finger typing fingers of the same people. This is what's always confusing to me. Because if these things don't exist, then they never existed and they don't exist in the future and they don't exist now. So then why do they exist for you, blank person? And why did they exist for people in the past that you're mad about people, quote unquote, taking land that nobody owned because it doesn't really belong to anyone? And those people were saying, you can't come on it. And then the other people took it and then they said, you can't come on it. So they're all doing, everyone's all doing the same thing. You know what I mean?
Now we had an open door policy in our dorm room, the show,
Yeah. Yep.
and I think that actually increased security because it meant there was always somebody there watching a movie.
Someone was there. Yeah, someone was there. Listen, I like it generally, meaning like I think you should be generally well. We talked to when we had our guest on, Jacob Ward. He's like, okay, well, your ideology, which because I was saying I'm whatever 98 in openness. He's like, great. Well, you'll get us all killed. Was his conclusion, which is not incorrect. But he didn't.
Right.
You know, I'm also a 16 in politeness, which means I will. Everyone gets a shot. 98% of people get a shot. 16% of people get to stay, which I think is pretty fair. You let everyone in the room. Anyone can come into the show. If someone keeps wetting my bed, you got to go. Or if you come in when I ask you to leave, you got to go. Or if I say, hey, don't come in when the door's locked and they break the lock open and come in, then you forfeit your occupancy.
Sock
So
on the door.
yeah. So then, because the thing is, like we're us, right? We have boundaries? Yes or no? Okay, then boundaries exist. Then do we have boundaries for our space around us? Do we have a personal bubble? Okay, then that exists. Do we have a boundary in terms of the place that we dwell? Okay, then that exists. What about our tribal unit? Can we get like a certain circumference of area that's ours and we can say that exists? Okay, then that exists. And all you're doing expanding that to like in some ways maybe a too large group, right? A state boundary, a national boundary, but you need some sort of boundary because people will take what they can get whenever they feel like they want it or need it, right? Aren't we constantly trying to protect ourselves from like vulture capitalists and you know chaos capitalists and rapacious oligarchs? So then,
That's the challenge, right? It only takes one person to not subscribe to that
yep.
openness exchange,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
the Openness Exchange, they're subscribing to it. They're like, oh, open, great. I'm gonna grab it. Oh, you can come, you can take it from me anytime you want. You just have to come get it because I've moved it over here.
Right.
It's gonna be pretty hard for you. But I'm fully in your openness is the best policy of all for anybody who wants to exploit anybody. So if anybody exists who likes to exploit, by all means, love. No criminal is going to be sad about everyone owns everything
Mm.
because then might makes right. That's all you have left. That's it. So this is the whole problem is like if you start deciding what laws are real laws and what laws are wrong laws, this neighborhood watch is an active insurrection, right? It's an active attempt to obstruct lawful execution of federal law, organized, sometimes using force, right? If you're using obstruction by vehicles, then you're using force. Again, I'm not opposed to insurrections, but if January 6th got us all flipped out, this has to flip us out the same way, and we have to go. It needs a radical justification because what you're justifying is where they're coming from is a radical thing. And then they're pointing to like training schedules. Yes, is it great? Should they? No. But also look at the numbers. Look at just the numbers of raw deportations. Self deportations over 1 million, deportations over 700,000, with a mistaken identity rate like within the statistical range of yeah, it's like maybe in some case at worst it's a doubling of rate, but the rate is like from 0.2 to 0.4% of all arrests. In which case, that's a great rate. That's fantastic. They're not killing people. This is not the success failure rate of capital punishment. This is literally just like we're now in some cases they've sent them to other countries. I think that's weird. But in some cases they can't legally send them back to their home country for whatever reason. But it's like, well, you can't stay here. Just like the bar, right? I don't know. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
So it seems like one of the most legitimate things the Trump administration did in the last
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
was reduce training from
Yep.
72 days to 42 days, 584-hour program to 240 hours.
Yep.
Um, and then that's been correlated with uh, just just the use of force, using firearms safely, um, etc. And
What increase? What percentage of increase for per interaction has that correlated with an
I
increased force?
don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
So
feeling
that's
like I was a part two bubbling here because obviously this is my sort of like half-assed attempt to do some research
yeah. Well, the problem is
and
if they track totals, of course the totals are going to be higher because you're literally kicking out twice as many people. So use of force is going to double. If it didn't double, then you're basically like, oh my gosh, they somehow solved it by doing. If it was a higher total but a lower rate, then the less training was a beneficial maneuver. I'm not saying it is. I'm assuming it's probably in the neighborhood of the false arrests. It's probably doubled. But when you double and triple the volume, to like statistically, you know what it is to upscale, right? To scale a business. When you scale something up, if you scale your users or whatever, if you scale them up 3 times and your error rate only doubles, like you're high fiving. Like that's amazing. Like for your system not to fail completely would be. I'm assuming again. I've never scaled anything up to that size, but you definitely are playing in arenas that are much more like that.
well, maybe the hope is that the air rate would be consistent or I mean that's worth absolutely looking into. Maybe it's even more of that same article from PBS, but
Yeah,
um, to actually really try to understand what the correlation is between what we I think know quantitatively is that the training was radically like gutted, like halved.
yeah, or streamlined depending on your bias. Yeah.
My bias is known.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't listen. I don't trust cops very much anyway at all. So, um, I don't think more training is going to help them more than less training. I was like, I think the failure rate would be pretty similar, but I also don't think training is that relevant either in an autodidactic culture. But
Well, there's different kind of trainings. I mean, like one of the things I guess was they took away Spanish speaking classes. So
yep,
that's logically to me gonna create challenges when you're trying to interface with, even if you're just trying to arrest somebody who speaks Spanish, as an example.
yeah, it might. But again, that might streamline things, meaning you're not trying to. They're streamlining the legal structure very differently too, because they're starting to pull in JAG lawyers basically to function as they're trying to prosecute every single case. By the way, they're not just kicking people out. Like everyone is going to have a record, which A is way better because that means people the what is it, been like a 4 times or 5 times increase in habeas corpus filings. Because if you're being prosecuted as an actual prosecution, you can be like, this isn't due process. You can have your lawyer fire for like a full habeas corpus trial, depending on your legal status. But everyone is getting a trial, whereas previous administrations just kick people out. So we've increased enforcement, but we've also increased legal accountability. That's great. Like again, I don't know why more people aren't talking about that. That is at least fantastic. Like again, you got to focus on the positive too. Have more people been shot in the street? Heck yeah, you know what I mean. So that's bad. But you have to talk about both, or else I don't know how anyone could take you seriously as a protester. And so this is why I think when you put up the signs, this is when you to me I was like, don't. This is almost to me evidence that it's gone way past rationality. If people are putting up signs on their bookstores, everyone is welcome here except for I. What about the police?
Val Kilmer
The
not welcome.
Yeah, the police do it too. The police. What do you? You're not the police, not the CIA, not the FBI. Like what are you talking about? Like it's just I don't know how you don't get frustrated by this, Andy. It
Well,
doesn't make any it
I've
doesn't make
heard
any
this
sense.
from the I don't want to say too glibly the black population, but
Yeah.
black folks, south side of Chicago, been let's say facing the police. And and this I do see. Like when
Yep.
I visit friends or volunteer in the southwest side of Chicago, there are fucking cops everywhere. And we could have a whole conversation about why that matters or why that exists or whatever. But it changes my nervous system. I mean, it's just like, you know, um, so anyway, I have heard anecdotally some black folks being like, "Welcome to the party." Like why? And
It's
I think you even mentioned that on another
of
episode.
course.
Just like,
My mom interacts with the police literally on like a weekly basis. Like this is not so maybe this is a class or a small town thing or whatever. Like you're saying there weren't police around or whatever. At least when I was in Maine, like any kid who saw the police, you ran away. You ran away as soon as you saw a cop car, no matter what you did. Now, the
Yep.
worst thing that ever happened to me when I was a kid, they took my nunchucks away. I had to go down to the police station to get my weapons back.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
really all that happens to me. And they were practice nunchucks, dude. They were just hard foam. I mean, they hurt, but still. Um, so, but like that's the general vibe, like in terms of life and places where there are more crime or more police, and you can, whatever, chicken and egg that all you want. It's not phenomenally simple. Um, but like cops don't necessarily cause that in a place where there are lots of cops. They don't cause an increase in heart rate. You're just like, what do you mean? There's cops around. Do you know how many people are dealing drugs right now? Do you know how people get raped in this, like the sexual assault rate in this particular zip code? I mean, to me, I was like, that's one of the best things to look up. Whenever you're like, why are there so many police here? I don't know. Look up the sexual assault rate in that zip code. Go ahead, just go ahead and do it. To me, that's a great one because like who is mad about that? You're like, well, drugs. Well, maybe all drugs should be legal, and then murders are good because there's a dead body, y'all. Robbery, you're like, yeah, but you know what? That can be gamed. They could put something on them. You know what I mean? But like, look up sexual assault, man. Look up rate statistics, and then be like, all right, do you want less? You want less law enforcement around? Doesn't really make any sense. And so this is my big question: is like, why is ICE the bad guy for doing what they're supposed to be doing legally? I would say the people trying to stop the cops are the bad guys in terms of good guys, bad guys.
Well,
And
some of it is like that. What makes the headlines is when ICE is behaving illegally. I mean, and that certainly has happened. Uh, two quick stats, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't I forgot to grab the citation. Like we can look later, but in the period from January 2025, Trump inauguration, to January 12th, 2026, ICE confirmed 36 deaths in custody, which apparently made that ICE's deadliest year in 2 decades. Um,
by total, but that's not. You would say you and I would both agree that's not how you tabulate anything.
you mean because of the increased
Yeah,
activity?
it's that's not how you'd figure out whether something is deadly. That's like saying like, well, white people are the most dangerous murderers in the United States of America. And you're like, no, they're not. They kill at the rate of their percentage of the population. So you know what I'm saying? In order to make that like an actual like cohort based statement, if you're going to be talking about ICE and like their danger, the amount of people dead, it's flipping terrible. That's an increase of that many more families in mourning. But in terms of that's like literally being like, do you know how many people died of COVID in 2018? It was like three. And then it was tons more. It's the deadliest COVID year. COVID's the worst. And you're like, well, but wait, how many people had COVID in both of those times? That's how we determine whether there's like a danger or like an exceeding danger of the thing itself.
And then the last one, again on the false positives.
Yeah.
So data from the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse
Oh my
found,
gosh, that's a great
I,
name.
seriously, ICE wrongly identified at least 2,840 US citizens as potentially eligible for removal. Now, here's the kicker. Between 2002 and 2017, and at least 214 taken into custody.
That's a great rate. Can you imagine 214 false arrests? Like, does that, how, look, I mean, we can look up Chicago stats right now, right?
I mean, that's
How,
nationwide across 15 years.
so that means, and even if that tripled or something, again, in terms of if the number of people being hauled in tripled, then you're not concerned. 214, how many people get falsely arrested in Chicago on a yearly basis? One city.
So what I
How
want
many?
to find is
Yeah,
like what happened next, because that was up till
yeah,
2017.
yeah.
So
So this is the to me the fascinating thing is like I don't think it's real. Like I don't think the anti-ICE thing is real. It's ICE is funded in many ways or helped they help fund billionaires building more and more private facilities that are going to have to hold people while they actually go on trial because they're going to have to be held longer now because they're actually going through the legal system. Billionaires are also funding the anti-ICE pushback. So it's literally billionaires versus billionaires.
yeah.
Who wants illegal immigrants? They can pay jack shit. Giant corporations. Like that's the best, and they want ICE around too because they want ICE to be able to have a threat of ICE. Then you can continue to pay people Walmart style and keep people overnight, make them work 28-hour shifts. You know what I'm saying? Like this is not like an oligarchs versus the little people. This is not like we're trying to get them. Like no, it's billionaires versus billionaires, and we're all in between in this weird propaganda war, as far as I can tell. And do you pay attention to the alterations in constitutional access? Absolutely. And you go, hey, that's effed up. Yes, absolutely. But driving around and being like, ICE can't do the law here. Why do you, as a citizen, get to decide that a law that every nation on the planet enacts and maintains can't be maintained in your neighborhood? And why do you get to say what crimes are real crimes? Like without substance, can you say that? Of course you can. But how do you that's a you have to, at the very least you have to admit that's a massive justification that you're going to have to do. That isn't just like, well, I'm just worried about it. Like, yeah, okay. I'm really worried about rape crimes being prosecuted, guys, because there's a lot of false positives in rape, and really it's a subjective thing. So end SVU. Just no SVU allowed in this building. Like, that's silly. It's foolishness. So how is it not the same type of foolishness to just be like, we don't like it, our neighbors aren't safe? Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't, this is the, I don't get it. I just don't even understand.
We'll tell you what,
Yeah.
uh, I thought about, I already postponed this one. I thought about doing it again because I am going to this training on Saturday. So I'm going
Yeah.
to go right into the heart of it. They're going to tell
Yeah.
me all of the stats you've been asking for,
Well, you
I'm
can
sure.
ask all these questions. You can go, why do you care about this? Why do you care? Why is this law? Why are these laws bad? And
And
other
that's going to
laws
be
aren't
really
bad.
edgy for me to have my Brendan voice actually get an outside voice
Yeah.
in such a training
Oh,
rather
they
than,
would love it. They would love it. As someone who likes learning about things and getting upset about things that are truly unjust, it's like one of my favorite things since I was a little boy. No, this is the only thing. This is when, if people react poorly, then you know they don't know what they're talking about. Because everybody who's excited about an injustice is like a person on cocaine at a party. They are thrilled to tell you all about it. When you were actively like doing mutual aid every week and someone's like, oh, what do you get up to? And they're like, why do you help those people? You'd be like, oh, I'm glad you asked. The reason we focused on this community, like, you know what I'm saying? And I asked
right.
it sincerely, right? Have you ever met someone who wasn't intensely involved in injustice, who didn't want to explain every piece of minutia? Like, I don't know anybody.
Yeah. Well, I would, with your consent, like to do a part two on this one.
Yeah,
And
I think that's fair.
with bringing in what I learned there, maybe
Yeah,
going a little bit deeper in my, crust research. And, we didn't even touch on like Minneapolis. I mean,
yeah.
that could almost be its own whole episode. So, uh, thank you. I'm
Thank
gonna,
you.
well, we don't usually do an in vote. We could do a midway vote, I guess.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
still
yeah.
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. Are they the bad guys? I mean, no. Are there ICE guys who are bad guys? Yes. Are there activists who are bad guys? Yes. People out there, anti-ICE people and ICE people, there's, you can go ahead and pick, let's just say 60% of both groups are bad guys. But yeah, the cops can't be the bad guys unless you can really prove they're not, they're like somehow all corrupt cops, I guess,
All right.
in terms of good guys, bad guys. And I'm saying this as someone who used to always want to be the outlaw, by the way. I wanted to play the robber. I
That's
want, I don't,
way more fun.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You don't have to play by all the rules.
Love you.
Love you.